I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode, I will be talking about Prophecies Begin, Book 2, Fire and Ice, Chapter 7. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Before I dive into today's episode, a quick reminder that if you would like access to the comment section, spoiler extended versions of each episode, as well as extra bonus videos and other bonus content, then you can subscribe on Substack for just $5 a month. Now on to the episode. In my notes here, I have several paragraphs of things I wrote that are things I have been thinking about since the last chapter. So I'm just going to read them and maybe it'll remind me what my thoughts were and I can discuss it here. So it says, in the last chapter, Fireheart was careful about concealing Ravenpaw's identity in case gossip would travel back to ThunderClan and they would find out Fireheart had lied to them about Ravenpaw being dead. But I think that wouldn't be the extent of the problem, because the question that would follow is, why? Why did you lie about Ravenpaw being dead? And the answer is to protect him from the ThunderClan deputy, who Ravenpaw says killed ThunderClan's former deputy. If Bluestar believed Fireheart's story, justice would already have come to Tigerclaw, but if the story got out to everyone, Fireheart would likely be shamed and maybe even punished for supporting Ravenpaw's accusation. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the idea of why it would be bad if everyone found out the truth about Ravenpaw being alive. Not just that they were lied to, but why they were lied to, and then Fireheart would have to explain that, and they would not be satisfied with that explanation. And Fireheart might be punished for it. And then the second thing I have here is, how is the TV show going to depict the clans when they are in a big group? In the books, they are just described as a group with specific cats' appearances and names mentioned here and there. We do get lists of the cats at the beginning of the books, but not all the cats are included. This is fine because it leaves it to the reader's imagination to picture what the whole clan looks like, and it gives the authors flexibility to add characters later and just be like, they were there the whole time. We're just addressing them by name now. So yeah, I feel like in my imagination, when they're describing the clan, it's usually kind of a mass of shadowy cats with the ones that I know mixed in. And I feel like the size of the clan that I imagine kind of varies based on how it's being described. Like, sometimes I imagine it's like a really big group and we're just never given the names of all of them. So there's always this like ensemble of cats that are just never mentioned. But I feel like that might not be how it is. It might be that the clans are very small because WindClan, even though they're not all mentioned by name, they seem to all be mentioned. Like, it doesn't say, and then the rest of the cats went across the Thunder Path. It describes them going in twos. So let me actually look back in chapter 6 on page 64. The strongest group will go first. Okay, but it says the whole clan was clustered, and it says One Whisker led the first group forward. So that there does not say how many cats there are. I was thinking we'd be able to get an accurate count of how many cats are currently in WindClan, but I guess not. But then 2 warriors came next, accompanied by a pair of skinny elders. So that is 2 warriors, 2 elders. Okay, then 2 larger groups crossed. Also, I don't know if you can hear, but the cats are playing. Then 2 larger groups crossed, leaving just 1. Okay, so again, 2 large groups. They're not saying how many in each group. And then it's Morningflower and her kit, and 3 very elderly cats, and then Tallstar and Deadfoot. We don't know which group Barkface and Ashfoot are in, which are I think the only other cats that we know by name. And we don't even know Barkface's name until later when he says the prophecy, and Fireheart doesn't even know Ashfoot's name by now. But that's besides the point. The point is, I thought that this chapter said, like, okay, there was a group of 2, then a group of 3, and then a group of however many, and that we would know the exact count of WindClan, but we don't, because there's several groups where it just says, and then a group crossed, and we don't know how many it is. So the challenge I'm thinking for the TV show is going to be, how do they decide how many other cats are in the clan? Because they're going to have to animate all of them, and they're not going to be able to get away with making them shadowy silhouettes in every scene. So they're going to have to come up with character designs, and they're going to have to keep them consistent for continuity's sake. Now, the advantage they have over the authors is that they have all the source material to work with. So they're going to be able to know which cats are unnamed now, and they're going to be able to do the math and figure out. Oh, and actually, this is what my next paragraph is. In the show, all the source material is out, so they can do the math and figure out which characters would be what age in each clan and animate them accordingly. But some cats are never named in the clans. So are the people making the show coming up with their own original designs for background characters? Will they be adding brand new characters who are named and who have significant impact on the plot? I'm very curious to see what decisions they make for the show. It's kind of like how the Percy Jackson show is very loyal to the books and depicts it very well, and the author is very involved with the production, like he's an executive producer. But they also do make changes, like adding new characters that are main characters and things like that. So, well, a main character at least, I'm referring to from season 2. As of recording this, season 3 and beyond haven't come out yet. But I think it would be cool to see if they come up with new characters just for the show, while also filling in characters that they know will be important later. And if you missed my bonus reaction to a fan-made LPS Warrior Cats movie by the YouTuber Pink Bunny Girl 43, in that there were some changes from Into the Wild, the book, and this fan-made movie, where some cats were mentioned by name that are not mentioned by name in the first book. So I'm sure they'll do stuff like that. And if not mentioning by name, they'll at least be there in the background and then become important later. So anyway, that's a lot of tangents. I have one more note here, but I'm just going to keep it to the bonus episode. So again, if you want access to these extra details, extra videos and stuff, check out the Substack. Okay, so that is all of my thoughts leading into this chapter. So let's get into it. Chapter 7 begins with the cat's reaction to Barkface's prophecy, which was, "This day shall bring an unnecessary death," which that implies that some deaths are necessary, which that could lead to a whole philosophical debate, which we're not going to get into right now. But everyone is silent, and then Deadfoot says, "Any of the clans could see those clouds. We can't be sure that the message is for us." And Tallstar says, "Whatever StarClan has planned for us, today we return to our home." So they all set off. And again, I feel like it's weird that Barley and Ravenpaw didn't wait around until morning. I guess they were just escorting them to safety, but Ravenpaw had agreed to keep watch for the night. And I don't know if this is where Barley and Ravenpaw are living, but it's kind of not the best hostmanship to just leave before all the cats are awake and less vulnerable and you've ensured their safety till the end. But oh well. I'm not that upset about it, but I feel like in the show they'd be able to fix that and have them be there till the morning and then say goodbye and then have the prophecy happen, you know. Then Fireheart offers that he and Graystripe can scout ahead, and Tallstar agrees to this. Now, I feel like Tallstar is being a little too trusting of Fireheart. I think Fireheart deserves to be trusted, and I know he's proven that he's trustworthy every step along this journey, but still, I feel like Tallstar, as the leader of his clan and with the clan safety being his responsibility, he should be a little more guarded against Fireheart. Like, I keep thinking of the show The 100, which I love, and thinking about Lexa and... Hi, Lucky. Indra. Like, Lexa is very guarded, but the second she starts to have trust, Indra is even more aggressively protective of her. So I feel like they could have had a similar dynamic here with Tallstar being very guarded, but as soon as he starts to let his trust open up to Fireheart, Deadfoot could be more aggressively protective of Tallstar and the rest of the clan, and more suspicious of Fireheart, which could then lead the reader to feel a resentment towards Deadfoot and therefore a suspicion of him, which could just lead to a good amount of tension and intrigue throughout the reading. I think it's fine how it is, but I think it would have made it a little more tense if Tallstar wasn't just agreeing with everything Fireheart was saying, you know? However, that brings in the question, why is Tallstar so trusting of Fireheart? And I'm not going to cut this from the spoiler-free version because I genuinely have no idea if this is the case because I don't remember. But I'm wondering if Tallstar, like when Fireheart had the dream of Wind Clan before he realized it was Wind Clan, and he saw Tallstar by the fire and Tallstar's eyes looked into his, I'm wondering if Tallstar had the same dream but from his perspective, and he saw Fireheart and somehow felt a sense of safety and security from seeing Fireheart, and maybe he thinks it was a sign from StarClan that he can trust him, so he's just going along with everything Fireheart is saying. Again, I have no idea if that's the case, but I'm just trying to think of explanations in my head for why Tallstar would be so trusting of everything Fireheart's saying, and that's just what my head's going to. And you'll see throughout this whole chapter, there's so many moments. It was like every couple sentences, I wrote a note about different theories that were popping into my head of things that I was anticipating were about to happen. So we'll see as we read on. I like here that Fireheart can see from Tallstar's worried eyes that Barkface's warning had disturbed him more than his confident words suggested. His clan might be stronger, but it was in no state to fight off attackers. I like that Fireheart is able to empathize with other cats and really tune into how they're feeling, even when they're trying to hide it. And I noticed this detail with Tallstar in chapter 6 on page 69 when at the bottom Tallstar's eyes burned with curiosity, but all he asked Fireheart was, "Can we trust him?" referring to Ravenpaw. But this one's a little less clear because that could be just the narrator saying like Tallstar's eyes burned with curiosity, but all he asked Fireheart was. But I also feel like that was making me think that Fireheart was noticing, because it could have just said Tallstar's eyes burned with curiosity. He asked, "Can we trust him?" But it says, "But all he asked." That all is making me think that Tallstar was wondering something more, and I think Fireheart was wondering that. It's very like reading between the lines. It's just one word and interpreting it that way. But that is a thing. So then it says that Fireheart and Graystripe ran ahead and they took turns going back to the clan. Now, when I read that, I was a little confused because I was thinking, are they taking turns going back to ThunderClan? But no, That would be a long, long journey to go all the way back and forth. No, they're definitely just going back and forth to Wind Clan. I feel like they easily could have just said took turns going back to Wind Clan, and that would have cleared up any confusion. It's like, I don't know if anyone else would get confused when reading that sentence, but I did. So I feel like to eliminate any distraction that takes you out of the reading, they could have just said Wind Clan. But anyway, it's immediately cleared up by the second half of that sentence, which is telling Tallstar that the way ahead was clear, or warning him to stay back while a two-leg passed by with a dog. Then rain starts to fall again, and Fireheart recognizes the red dirt track that led away from two-leg territory and into Wind Clan's hunting grounds. And Fireheart can see that Wind Clan had caught up with them. Deadfoot was at the head of the group. He looked startled by Fireheart's sudden appearance. Now, a couple things there. Why was Deadfoot at the head of the group and not Tallstar? And why did Deadfoot look startled by Fireheart's sudden appearance? It just seems like odd details to include. And then they stop the plan of running ahead. I guess now because they're in Wind Clan territory, so it makes sense. But Deadfoot continues leading, and Fireheart takes up the rear. And they're all having a faster pace because they're getting excited. And Fireheart can tell they know where they're going at this point. He follows them through the hedge and toward the slope that leads to the uplands. And at the foot of the slope, Deadfoot and the warriors pause to wait for the rest of the group to catch up. Fireheart ran back to the rest of the clan. Okay, wait, so that's confusing because it said Fireheart followed close behind the last cat. But then he gets there and then it says Fireheart ran back to the rest of the clan. So it's confusing how that's written. It had said a little earlier that Fireheart was wanting to see the clan's reaction when they first saw the uplands, but now that they're pausing at the bottom, he's heading back to make sure everyone else is catching up. He's looking for Morning Flower, and he finds her walking beside a tabby warrior who held the kit in his mouth. And that's making me wonder, is that warrior the father? Who is the father? That type of thing. And then Fireheart ends up next to Graystripe at the back of the group. As the clan joined Deadfoot at the foot of the slope, the deputy got to his paws, and Tallstar took the lead. Again, this was a moment that took me out of the reading because I was like, what do you mean got to his paws? It never mentioned him sitting down. But I think it did mention that they stopped to wait for the clan. So I guess by the time Fireheart caught back up with them, they had sat down or something. Which makes sense because it's a long journey. You might as well take a rest for a few moments while you can. And I guess maybe Tallstar was leading the slower part of the clan to catch up. But it didn't say that before, so it just felt weird to me that Deadfoot was leading the whole group. Tallstar began to follow a narrow sheep trail through the rough grass and heather. This also took me out of the reading because what's a sheep trail? Is it a trail left behind by sheep? Are there sheep living in Wind Clan territory or right next to it? Does Fireheart even know what sheep are? So I'm going to look up what is a sheep trail. Okay, skipping the AI overview from the website Lady Carnarvon. Sheep paths. The field occupies a huge space with plenty of room for roaming far and wide, yet the sheep clearly prefer to follow each other in single file without deviation. Sheep bond tightly to form a flock. They instinctively want to be in a group and feel more secure like that. Isolation stresses them. They are repetitive in their daily behavior for the same reason, hence the paths. Once one of them starts to move with purpose, the others will follow the leader. However, the answer as to why they take the routes they do is not always so clear. Sheep sensibly tend to follow the driest ground unless disrupted by drainage or man-made tracks. They have a good sense of smell and, like many other animals, scent glands in their feet. Interesting. So that a well-trodden path will have a strong, lingering smell. Then, once a path is established, they find it easier to walk on it as it is firmer underfoot, and so it becomes self-perpetuating. There are other sort of sheep paths too. In areas where sheep have been a long-term part of farming life, with the consequent economic cycles of agriculture. Their movements and the sheep fairs have also become part of the landscape and local etymology. Some road names recall how we used to move animals around. Sheep drove is a relatively common road name in England, and it keeps going on. So this is very interesting. And when it says sheep have scent glands in their feet, does that mean they can smell with their feet? I'm gonna Google, can sheep smell with their feet? Fun facts about sheep from the Open Sanctuary Project website. 2 is sheep have a great sense of smell and have special scent glands located in front of their eyes and between the digits of their hooves to help them out. Mothers learn to identify their babies by their unique scent. That's the only mention of smell. Let's look at BCSPCA, 10 fun facts about sheep. 2 is sheep have scent glands on their face and hooves. One way sheep communicate with each other and their surroundings is through their excellent sense of smell. Sheep have scent glands in front of their eyes and between the digits of their hooves that produce smelly secretions used to communicate with one another. Okay, so it creates the smells. Gotcha. Okay, we've gotten way down the sheep path, if you will, of sheep fun facts. So let's get back to the story. I'm just distracted by that, though, because that means sheep live nearby, and I don't remember any mention of sheep in this series, but I guess we'll see. At the brow of the hill, WindClan made proud silhouettes against the stormy sky, while the wind sent ripples through their fur. I feel like that'd be such a cool scene to see in the TV show. And then 2 apprentices charge past Fireheart, but Tallstar tells them to wait. There might be hunting parties from other clans here. But then Morningflower hurries ahead, and Tallstar flicks his tail, and somehow the warriors know what that means, and 3 warriors race forward to escort her. Again, this confuses me, because he just told apprentices not to go, but he's letting a vulnerable queen with her very young kid go ahead. Like, shouldn't he just send the warriors first, and then they can come back and tell them it's safe, and then they can all go in? And then the rest of the clan hurries after them, and Tallstar tells Fireheart and Greystripe, "My clan is grateful for your help. You've both proved you are warriors worthy of StarClan. WindClan has come home, and it is time for you to return to yours." And when he says, "You've proved you are warriors worthy of StarClan," is that like the equivalent of telling someone they're worthy of going to heaven? And Fireheart feels disappointed because he had wanted to see Morningflower settle into the nursery with her kit. And I kind of feel the same way. But there's no need for Fireheart and Greystripe to stay at this point. So Tallstar tells One Whisker and Deadfoot to escort Greystripe and Fireheart to Fortrees. Now, when I read that, I was getting worried and thinking about the prophecy that Barkface said, that there would be an unnecessary death today. So that had my antenna going off every time any chance of any cat betraying anyone and leading to the death of anyone. It was really trying to detect any of that. So when Tallstar said Deadfoot and One Whisker should escort them, I was getting worried, like, oh my gosh, earlier it was weird how it was written that Deadfoot was leading the group, and that he seemed startled to see Fireheart, even though they had made a plan for Fireheart and Greystripe to be going back and forth. Like, he should have expected that. So was he acting suspicious, or was that just written weirdly? I don't know. But if it was suspicious, can we trust Deadfoot? Is he gonna kill Fireheart and Greystripe, or try to, on this journey? And then is One Whisker going to protect Fireheart and Greystripe and accidentally kill Deadfoot in the process? And would that be the unnecessary death? I feel like more readers would be prone to being worried that that might happen if Deadfoot had been more harsh toward Fireheart and Greystripe in distrusting them. And Tallstar tells Greystripe and Fireheart to tell Bluestar that WindClan will not forget it was ThunderClan who brought them home. So that's good. WindClan and ThunderClan forming not necessarily an alliance, but just being on good terms with each other. and Deadfoot walks ahead, and Fireheart, Graystripe, and One Whisker walk next to each other behind. So again, there's like this separating of Deadfoot for some reason. And as they make their way toward Fortress, One Whisker smells a rabbit, and he gets excited and runs off. And again, here I was getting worried. Oh my gosh, is he gonna bump into a RiverClan hunting patrol going after the same rabbit, and they're gonna kill him, and that's gonna be an unnecessary death? But nope. He catches the rabbit and shares it with the other cats, and they enjoy the meal. But then Fireheart is feeling very cold and tired and sore, and he starts thinking, what if they took a shortcut through RiverClan? After all, they were on a mission that had been agreed to, at the gathering at least, by all the clans. I don't know about that. So let's go back to the gathering, page 29. Nightpelt says, very well, Bluestar, we will allow WindClan to return. And Bluestar says, 2 of us have agreed, Crookedstaw. WindClan must be found and brought home. Until then, no clan should hunt in their territory. So nowhere there did they agree that they would send cats on a mission the next day to go retrieve WindClan. They just agreed that they would let WindClan come back. Maybe in the TV show they can make that agreement more specific at the gathering, because throughout the book so far I kept feeling a little confused about the terms of their agreement, because they keep referencing back to this agreement, but when I look back on it, it's not super clear. Like, at first I was thinking Bluestar should keep the mission a secret and just let Graystripe and Fireheart sneak out of camp and make up an excuse for them doing something else. But nope, they're just allowed to kind of tell everybody on their way out what they're doing. And White Storm was like, I heard you're going on a quest, blah, blah, blah. Like, I thought they should be more secretive about it because the other clan leaders seemed to be against the plan. But they did technically agree to it, but they didn't agree, yes, Bluestar, you should send 2 of your newest warriors tomorrow to go and get WindClan. They just agreed, fine, we'll let them come back. So, also, she said, until then, no clan should hunt in that territory. So, RiverClan's already broken that agreement. And if anything, they didn't agree to that last part. They just agreed that they'll let WindClan return. Bluestar ended the gathering by saying, WindClan must be found and brought home. Until then, no clan should hunt in their territory. That's just her tacking that on to the end after the metaphorical handshake happened. She should have asked, do we all agree on that? But she didn't. So I don't know. I feel like that gathering scene could be strengthened. And going into making this podcast, I was not anticipating critiquing the writing. And I'm not a best-selling published author. I'm not even a published author. So who am I to make these critiques? But I have taken a lot of creative writing classes, participated in creative writing competitions, and I'm just a consumer of this, so I'm just putting out there my critiques as a consumer. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be whatever. Also, just me overthinking that is unnecessary. So anyway, Fireheart decides to suggest this plan of going through RiverClan, and he says we could follow the gorge. RiverClan doesn't hunt there. It's too steep for them to get down to the river. And Graystripe agrees because he's also aching and tired. And Deadfoot says Tallstar ordered us to travel with you to Fortress. Fireheart says, if you don't want to come with us, we'll understand. But Deadfoot says, we couldn't let you go into RiverClan territory alone. And Fireheart protests, and Deadfoot says, if we did go that way, it would let RiverClan know that WindClan is back. And Fireheart says, and once they've smelled fresh WindClan scent, they might not be so keen to come rabbit hunting in your territory again. And One Whisker, who's also tired, says, it'll mean we'll be home before moonrise. And Deadfoot says, you just want to make sure you get a good nest in your den. And again, here's a moment of Fireheart sensing a cat's true feelings, despite what they're showing, despite what they're trying to show, as Deadfoot's voice was stern, but there was a good-natured gleam in his eye. And Fireheart asks if they are going through RiverClan territory, and Deadfoot decides yes, and they head that way. But the thing about their logic of once RiverClan smells WindClan, they'll know they're back and they won't hunt in the territory again. I don't think that's a correct assumption. First of all, if they smelled WindClan, they would know they're back and they'd be mad about it because they got excited about hunting in their territory. Even though, sure, they agreed to let them come back. They also, I guess, agreed, even though not technically, not to hunt in WindClan territory. But they broke that promise, so what makes you think they won't break the promise of letting them come back? I feel like they'd take that opportunity to drive WindClan out again while they're weak. And that's just if they smelled that WindClan is back at all, let alone in RiverClan territory. Then they might think that WindClan is retaliating against them for hunting in their territory, and that could lead to more violence. So this is just unwise on all counts, and I think Deadfoot was right to hesitate. Like, Fireheart, you should stick to the plan that you guys have of going back the way you came, and Deadfoot, you should stick to your leader's orders and the safest strategy. You all know better in this situation, but I can understand how feeling really tired and sore could influence your decision to want to take a shorter route. But they could also maybe shelter at Four Trees overnight and take a break and then continue the rest of the journey in the morning. But nope, they have to make a silly decision. Also, Deadfoot kind of teased One Whisker about just wanting to get back to the den, but I'm sure Deadfoot wants to too. They've both been away from their home for 2 months. You'd want to get back as soon as possible. They probably didn't even really want to escort Graystripe and Fireheart in the first place. But they're both nice cats. They both want to help. And they're both doing their job. It's just they're taking a shortcut. Also, the map does not reflect this plan either, because from WindClan through Four Trees to ThunderClan camp, it's a straight shot. But if you take the route next to the river, it's a longer path to loop around to ThunderClan camp. So, I don't know. I take the book's words as more canon than the map, but I think the map should be as accurate as possible for moments like this when you're referencing back. Anytime the location or geography or whatever is mentioned, I like looking back at the map to see and visualize what they're talking about. But when that doesn't match, it is a little annoying. But then they go into RiverClan territory, and again with the prophecy, this was making me worried. Now I was like, oh great, now are they gonna run into RiverClan and Deadfoot is gonna be killed in a battle, and Fireheart's gonna have to carry the guilt of convincing him to go that route, and now that will sever the ties that Fireheart and Graystripe had just built with WindClan? Like, that would be disastrous. I was surprised that they reached RiverClan's territory before crossing the river, because I assumed the river was RiverClan's border, but at least between WindClan and RiverClan, it is not. So they're already in RiverClan territory by the time they reach the river, and then they keep going next to it on a very narrow and very high cliff. It's also described as a gorge. I'm going to double check what that is. Is that like a waterfall? Gorge. Merriam-Webster. A narrow passage through land. Okay. I feel like whenever I read gorge, I was picturing like a valley, like a deep, steep pit. But the gorge is the narrow path at the top that they're walking on. And Fireheart is worried about falling, but he can't resist peering over the side, and he sees the foaming river far below. He fearfully follows the other cats along the path, and I was feeling worried that Deadfoot was gonna fall over and drown in the river, fulfilling the prophecy, but it just keeps going. And Deadfoot lets out a warning yowl, and there's a screech behind them, and Fireheart turns around to see 6 RiverClan warriors charging at them. A dark brown RiverClan cat lands on top of Fireheart, and they roll around fighting each other. Wondering who that cat is, says he's a Tom. But then, from the forest behind them, Fireheart hears a furious war cry that fills him with hope. Tiger Claw. That's wild. That Tiger Claw is bringing Fireheart hope, and it's a ThunderClan patrol. Tiger Claw, Willowpelt, White Storm, and Sandpaw. And it just keeps going, but I'm like, why is a ThunderClan patrol in RiverClan territory? I feel like they're gonna have some catching up to do after this battle. It says the ThunderClan cats joined the battle, and the Brown Tom released Fireheart, and he quickly struggled to his paws. It doesn't say where the Brown Tom went from there, if he ran away or if he started battling another cat. I think I'm gonna assume he started fighting one of the cats from the ThunderClan patrol. But Fireheart sees Tiger Claw battle a gray tabby Tom who's unnamed until the Tom races away into the bushes, and then Tiger Claw looks at Leopard Fur. Now this is the first mention of Leopard Fur in this scene, and I remember during the gathering we saw Leopard Fur and Tiger Claw conversing. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't remember if anything comes of this, but I feel like there's something going on between Leopard Fur and Tiger Claw. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's tension. I don't know if it's an alliance. Like, I don't know what it is, but they were talking before, and now they could have mentioned that Fireheart recognized Leopard Fur earlier when the RiverClan cats first started running at them. It could have said, the RiverClan cats led by Leopard Fur or something. But no, it waits to drop that name until Tiger Claw is looking at Leopard Fur. So again, they're connecting those two cats. So I'm curious to see if that pattern continues going forward. Leopard Fur had been wrestling with Deadfoot, and here this is offensive, I think. It says the lame warrior was no match for the ferocious RiverClan she-cat. I don't know if that's true or a necessary sentence. It could have just been that because Deadfoot was tired from all the traveling and lack of consistent prey. Because Deadfoot is the deputy of WindClan, so obviously he's a strong warrior. But then I realized there's 3 deputies in this battle. Leopard Fur, Deadfoot, and Tiger Claw. And that was making me think, oh, what about the ShadowClan deputy? And then I was like, wait, who's the ShadowClan deputy? And then I'm like, oh, Nightpelt should be Nightstar by now. So we haven't seen ShadowClan in a minute, so I hope we get some kind of update about them soon. And Fireheart is getting ready to rescue Deadfoot, but Tiger Claw beats him to it. He grasps Leopard Fur's wide shoulders and hauls her off of Deadfoot. And Fireheart turns around to see Sandpaw battling another RiverClan she-cat, and the two are rolling closer and closer to the edge of the gorge. So when I read that, I was thinking the edge of the drop, but it's talking about the edge of the thin path. So it's the same point, but it's just that little difference in understanding what the word gorge meant. I thought he was going to save her at the last second, and she would be very thankful to him. But she doesn't realize how close she was to falling to her death. And when Fireheart batters away the RiverClan warrior and grabs Sandpaw by the scruff and drags her away from the edge, she furiously tells him, I can win my own battles without your help. And Fireheart is about to explain when they turn at the sound of a howl, and Graystripe is leaning over the side of the gorge, hind legs straining. He was leaning down with his mouth open, trying to get a grip, but it says there was a white paw clutching the edge, and Graystripe was trying to grip it with his mouth, but it disappeared out of sight. And in that moment, I was shocked. I was thinking, is this White Storm dying? I did not see that coming, but no. Everyone gathers after Graystripe's agonized call, and far below, the dark head of a RiverClan warrior sank beneath the water, and Fireheart remembers the prophecy, this day shall bring an unnecessary death. And that's the end of chapter 7. So we know it's a cat that had a dark head and at least one white paw. I don't remember who this character is, and I'm surprised that the cat is presumed dead, because RiverClan cats can swim, so you'd think they'd be okay. But maybe because it's such a far drop, they could still die. And the consequences of this death are not going to be good. I'm assuming RiverClan is going to be pissed at ThunderClan and WindClan, and ShadowClan is going to take RiverClan's side And the next gathering is going to be very tense. And I don't know if any clan is going to decide to have a retaliation attack or what, but whatever happens, it's not looking like it's going to be good. Also, one thing I forgot to mention was that, remember when Fireheart said, "Oh, RiverClan doesn't hunt on the gorge. We won't run into them." How did he know that? He's never been to RiverClan. So this is showing kind of the fault in his strength of empathy, in that he tends to imagine how he would feel in other cat situations, and that helps him read other cats and see what emotion they're feeling under the surface. But if the other cat that he's trying to empathize with feels a different way than he would in that situation, then this strategy or instinct falls short. Because while Fireheart might be terrified to walk on that thin path next to the river, RiverClan obviously isn't, as 6 of them were confidently running on this path that Fireheart was slowly and fearfully crawling across. So, very interesting. And this was a very exciting chapter. I feel like I had many moments I was pointing out throughout it that were taking me out of the story and distracting me and everything. But overall, I still like the chapter. I think it's good. I think it is kind of another transitional chapter. I guess I feel that way because they're moving from point A to point B. And 2 significant events did happen in this chapter. WindClan got back home and a RiverClan cat died. Or so we think. I actually have no idea. I don't remember. So, yeah, that's another thing I'm really enjoying about this podcast, is rediscovering plots that I completely forgot about and re-experiencing the unknown of what's going to happen next. It's very fun and exciting. So, this has been a very long episode. I had lots of things I was predicting throughout it, and yeah. So, thank you so much for listening, and if you'd like access to the comment section, spoiler extended versions of each episode, and other bonus content, then you can subscribe on Substack for just $5 a month. But otherwise, this has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.